This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment mentor for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute, nor is it to convey professional, psychological, financial, or medical advice. If you could use such services, please seek them out from someone you trust. Now here is today's episode. Episode 47. Today's episode is sponsored by Nicole Burgess, empowerment mentor to the high-achieving and sensitive professional woman in ending the overwhelmed and stressed out cycle, create balance in her life between work and home, so that she can thrive in her life and blaze her own trail. Well, welcome, sisters. Before I get started today, I want to remind you that if you want to be part of my Facebook group, go out to Introverted Sensitive Women Achievers and join the group today, full of like-minded women who are there to support one another. And I share my work and ask some questions within the group. And again, for Facebook, it's totally free. So I invite you to go out there today. In today's episode, what I want to talk about is rewriting that inner story that you all have going on in your mind, whether you're aware of it or you're not, so you can truly become your own heroine of the story. Over the years, the women that I have worked with, they have consistently told me that, their transformation in their work with me, they feel more free, they feel more expansive, they feel more joyful, and they truly feel more peaceful. And so much of where that comes from is each one of them has taken full responsibility for themselves and their choices that they've made. And they're no longer in a trance, meaning they're no longer in that place of unawareness. And they've taken the responsibility for where they are and where they're going. Psychiatrist Carl Jung talked about the first half of life, midlife, and the second half of life. And the first half of life is really where we go in and we're really building our sense of identity, our importance, and our so-called security. And what that is also sometimes referred to as the little self, the false self, or the ego self. And then in midlife, which Carl Jung talked about being around, 35, 40, and sometimes that can honestly be earlier if you've had a crisis, a medical crisis, or life crisis, or there's been a big loss. Oftentimes that can kind of spur the midlife. And I know there's a lot of conversations regarding what equals midlife. And I've had people say, well, midlife doesn't happen until your 50s. And I believe it actually happens a lot earlier than that. Then the second half of life is much more about ego has its place, but being more grounded in yourself. This is you really tapping more into your soul, your inner knowing, your inherent identity, where the ego is that container that kind of holds you all together, but you're more than that you've put down all those personas and masks, the things that I've talked about before in previous episodes. This has also been called the big S. So it's the higher self, the true self. But I want to back into this just a little bit more. So that first half of life where you're really building in kind of your ego strength, this is where all that operant conditioning has come into play. And then some people, one of the fancy words that is coming across over the last probably decade or more is, changing the neuroscience in it, which is really taking all the operant conditioning that you have that has been plugged into your subconscious. You take it now more to the conscious level and start to change that. And the only way to really change it is what I keep talking about in all my different episodes. If you listen to the people that I interview, if you listen to the solo episodes that I have, it's all about women being the leaders in their own life. It's about women taking responsibility 100% for their life, facing those fears, challenging old belief systems, really getting to know what drives them value-wise, so that they can create this life that really fulfills them. It is absolutely possible, but you have to do the work in order to make it happen. In episode 17, I talked quite a bit about the beliefs in your subconscious happen, prior to age 9. And then often what happens is that unconsciously is driving your life. And in order to shift that, you've got to go back to episode 1, which is about contemplation and self-reflection. It's about asking yourself of why did that trigger me so many times? Or why did that trigger me at all? Why did what this person said to me, make me so frustrated? What am I making this event mean? Right? Carl Jung there's this quote from him. It says, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves," which is so true. What I find though, in clients that I have worked with, if they're not really ready to do the work, they stay stuck in that trance, which is totally fine. Everybody has their own timing of when they need to kind of wake up. But oftentimes fear becomes a big player in people not wanting to go towards that second half of life. And to me, that second half of life living there really is so much freedom and joy in that place. And I know various authors or various mindfulness practitioners, they've talked about, I think Tara Brach is the one who talked about radical acceptance, which is one of her books. And I know one of my other guests, Tamara Powell, she talked about radical autonomy. It all goes back to the same thing of really fully owning all of who you are and the good, the bad, the ugly that happens in life, but not getting defined by that. All those events, they impact each and every one of us, but you get to choose whether you want to stay stuck in that old event or move forward. You are your own hero in your life. So in episode 23, I called it the midlife unraveling. This is where I think, to me, all that stuff really starts to take shape when you give yourself permission to really explore your old belief systems, you explore your values and where you want to go in your life. You can start paying attention to all the thoughts going through your head that truly are repetitive day in and day out. That's where the storytelling happens. If you are telling yourself, I suck at managing money, I suck at raising my teen daughter or teen son, or I suck as a parent, or I suck as a manager, guess what? You're going to behave in a way and create things in your life that really reinforce that thought. If you focus on where you want to go and who you want to become, you start to behave in a more confident way because you're taking actions, you're taking steps to challenge that. Does that mean everything is going to go smoothly all the time? No, it does not, but it means things can change. So let me give you an example here. I have been told many times over my life that me being this multi-passionate person is not going to get me anywhere, which again is totally not true. That's somebody else's fears of not being able to do it. I know in previous episodes and different podcast talks that I've given, I've shared when in my early 20s, I really went with what my parents had talked about was becoming an accountant. And I did that for many years, and it sucked the soul right out of me before I decided, okay, my passion is really to help people. And so then I went and got my master's. But if I would have stayed in that thought process of, I can only do this because one, it's quote safe financially, it's quote safe kind of a type of job versus, most of the time you hear that therapists don't make any money who are in the mental health field. You don't make any money. You can't make a living at it, which none of that is true. Or that you need to be such a self-sacrificing person that you're going to constantly, be stressed out about having finances. No, none of that is true. It's a business. I have a service. I'm able to serve people both in my, therapy practice and my coaching practice. I will not sacrifice so much that I can't keep my business open. I can't provide the service that women are asking me for. What good would it do me if I can't even meet my basic needs, from Maslow's hierarchy of needs? If I couldn't meet my own needs and then I can't keep my business going, then I don't have anything to help change the world, to help impact the world, right? So I need to make sure that one, I am financially stable for my businesses so that I can continue to do the work that I love and serve the community and those at large. If you have some of those thoughts, or you've been told you can't do this, or you can't do that, challenge that. Most people, right, or many people, we, myself included, go to our family and our friends to really get that support. Well, if they haven't done their own work, it's going to make it really hard for them to support you when you're taking a risk. And then we can get really stuck in that first half of life living of like, well, I've got to put this mask on to be what other people really want me to be. And then you don't live your life. You're living somebody else's. That's why I advocate so much for people to get that support that you need. If you're really working and you're making some changes in your professional life, your personal life, hire the coach, because you want to hire somebody who's been there, done that, and they're basically a step or two ahead of you. If you have some true mental health issues, then get a therapist. Work through those old traumas that maybe are keeping you kind of stuck or keeping you stuck in that fear. Get the support that you need so that you can truly live the life that you're wanting to live and really change that inner story that's going on. There came a point in time in my life when I knew as an accountant I needed to do something different. And then I went on to become a business analyst for a while, and I got to travel and do training, which I absolutely love teaching. And I finally decided, okay, I need to go back, or I want to go back and get my master's degree. If I would have done that any earlier than where I was at that time when I finally said, now's the time, I would have picked a program that would have been very traditional, that it would not have lit me up like my master's program did. I checked out a couple different schools that I thought might be interesting. One was more traditional, one was not, and hence that's when I went to the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, now called Sophia University. And it's fascinating. All the training that I got, I absolutely loved it. It lit me up every single day when I was there, and I knew I was on my path I was meant to be on. I have colleagues that went to a more traditional school. Now they're kind of coming more into the second half of life living, and they're wanting to know about spirituality. They're wanting to know more about kind of how the body impacts it, because, you know, you're all connected, your head down to your body, everything is connected. That really helped me get to where I am today. And I incorporate all of this into my coaching as well, and helping women really come back to, like, you don't have to keep living this life of being stressed out all the time. It's about knowing who you are. If you have this little, sometimes what we call this niggling, this urge, this nudging, that they're saying, hey, you need to do something different, pay attention to that. If you listened to last week's episode I had with Dr. Terry Mack, and we were talking about dating and relationships and bringing, again, the unconscious to the conscious, she talked quite a bit about how she had this niggling to write a book, and she did. She followed that over and over and over. There's something about that many women, I find, that intuitive piece, that connection to the soul, they shut that off at a fairly young age. Now, again, everybody has the ability to be intuitive. Everybody has the ability to be an empath. There can be all this operant conditioning or this societal, family, whoever the messages are coming from, that can really tamper that down. And if you go back and really allow yourself to open up and to trust this process and to truly listen to your intuitive hits, there is freedom in that. That's you really realigning yourself with your soul, your true calling. Again, that's that second half of life living that Carl Jung talked about. If I would have listened to my family or sometimes friends over the years about not loving and going after what really called to me, I'd still be in accounting. Oh my gosh, can't even imagine that right now as I say that out loud. You can be a multi-passionate entrepreneur, multi-passionate person. It is starting with one thing and getting good at it. So for me, I got really good at accounting, and now I can use that skill to help other psychotherapists in building their business, and eventually I'll switch that over to coaches and understanding just the accounting piece of it. If you've got a story in your mind saying, but Nicole, I don't know how to do numbers. I can't save for retirement. I don't know how. That's nothing more than a story. It's really exploring, am I going to allow this shame or past stuff stop me from it. It's skill building. That's all it is. If you were able to ride a bike, right, when you were little, you were able to build upon that skill. Maybe you started out as a tricycle, like I did, went to a two-wheeled bike with training wheels, like I did, rode that for many times, and then when you took the training wheels off, you were shaky, probably wiped out a few times. I did. And eventually you figured out how to turn, you figured out how to stop, you figured out how to really ride with confidence. It's a skill. It does take effort to do that. Same thing with managing money. Same thing with going after something you really want. There are some, I would call it not necessarily calculated risk, but taking risk in a mindful way. You're not just going to quit the job that you're in and say, okay, I'm going to start a business when you need money coming in to, pay for your food, your gas, your home, maybe your family. But all of that means you've got to pause and wake up from your own trance. Begin to shift the stories that you're telling yourself of what you can and can't do. It's one thing, I tell my clients often, if you've got the phrase, I can't, I don't know how, I will try, guess what happens? Your mind will follow that path, which is all that unconscious junk that goes over and over in your head, and it won't happen. Now, if you begin to shift that, I am doing this. I love living this in this new home that I have purchased, and you haven't got there yet, but you're focusing on that. You are beginning to help reprogram your subconscious. Again, that's the neuroscience behind things, being able to change things because the future hasn't happened. And oftentimes people get that positive thinking confused with that means you're happy-dappy all the time, which you're not. Positive thinking is focusing on where you want to go and letting life also unfold as it needs to unfold. If you are attempting to control every little aspect outside of yourself, first, you've created your own lovely illusion and story. Second, you don't have that ability to control things. The only thing you can control is you. So when you focus on where you want to go and you look at that every single day, that's you reprogramming your own mind. You can go back and listen to the Good Girl episode that I did, and that also is challenging that first half of life living where it's all ego-based, persona-based, and trying to live based upon other teachings that you have been taught or operant conditioning that you've been taught, and beginning to break free from that so you can move into second half of life living. Write the story that really speaks to your soul, that deep inner knowing, that spiritual connection that each and every one of us can have. It's especially important, I know, for many highly sensitive people as well, the HSPs, to have that spiritual connection. And again, spiritual connection, whatever you want to define that as, is with God, universe, higher spirit, whatever that is for you. But having that connection, then I call it we can get vertical downloads, the instantaneous information, those intuitive hits can come from that. You have the ability to change what it is you tell yourself. You have the ability to live the life you are really wanting to have and create. Again, if you go back and really listen to the interviews I've had with the women on my podcast, they all faced fears. They all looked at their shadows. They all looked at things that challenged them. Does that mean they're perfect and they don't have work to do? Oh my gosh, no. That is a constant. We're constantly evolving and shifting and changing, but it's giving yourself permission to do that inner work, to go in there and not stay stuck in the old mindset. And oftentimes I call it with folks as the victim mindset. Poor me, I can't do anything different. Life happens to me. If we stay in that mindset, you're right. Everything does happen to you and you can't really do anything different because that's what you're believing. Yet when you come from this place of, even though it feels really scary, or even though I'm afraid of doing this, I'm going to do it anyways, that's you taking 100% responsibility for your life and taking action. And remember, ego's job is to keep you where you are. It says, hey, we've been here for a long time. We know this place. It feels, quote, safe because it's comfortable. But it doesn't mean you have to stay there. That growth happens outside of that. And fear is all about that, future moment that isn't even here yet. So I can't stress enough about continuously coming back to the present moment and staying grounded in your body, staying grounded in the moment, and taking that next step. So again, if I would have listened to people outside of me and stayed living in the first half of life, I would still be an accountant. You wouldn't hear me talking on this podcast. You wouldn't know that I did another podcast called Launching Your Daughter, which continues to get lots of downloads these days. It's quite fascinating. I wouldn't be a therapist. I wouldn't be a coach. I wouldn't have created a course to help other therapists create a thriving practice regarding their finances. I wouldn't have these conversations with women who are saying, oh my gosh, doing this work has totally transformed me. I feel more free, more joy, more expansiveness. I'm now doing things that really do light me up. My relationships have more depth to them. There's more ease. And they've let down so many of their masks that they used to hide behind. It's time to rewrite your inner story. And if you need support in that, then go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com or schedule your discovery session with me. If you're not there yet, then I'm going to invite you to go out to that Facebook group that I said at the beginning of the podcast, the Introverted, Sensitive Women Achievers, and join that group. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you found it helpful or inspirational or even encouraging wherever you are right now in your life. If you know of another woman who may find this podcast inspirational or encouraging, please pass this along to her. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen. Until next time, take care.